On a sun-drenched Sunday morning along the endless stretches of Texas Highway 35, where the flatlands meet the horizon in a haze of heat, retired Army veteran Elijah Brooks, a senior African-American motorcyclist known for his unyielding spirit and vintage Harley-Davidson, found himself pulled over by two rogue cops for what they called unsafe riding, a fabricated excuse that masked their deeper prejudices and corrupt intentions. Little did officers Harlan and Vance know, their routine harassment would spiral into a nightmare of their own making, ending with them in handcuffs just minutes later, exposing the first cracks in a web of systemic abuse that would rock the entire department. Elijah, at 62, had always treated his Sunday rides like sacred rituals, starting in the quiet sanctuary of his modest garage in a suburban Houston neighborhood, where the air smelled of fresh-cut grass and lingering barbecue smoke from the night before. His hands, calloused from decades of wrenching engines and gripping M16 rifles in Vietnam, moved with deliberate care over the Harley's chrome accents, polishing them until they reflected the morning light like mirrors. The bike was more than transportation. It was a companion, a survivor like him, bought with his discharge pay after serving in a war that promised equality but delivered suspicion upon his return. As he worked, memories flooded in nights under enemy fire. The camaraderie of his platoon and the bitter homecoming where his uniform meant little against the color of his skin. He whispered to the machine, "We've both seen our battles, old girl," feeling a kinship in its steadfast rumble. The garage door stood open, inviting the breeze, and soon enough, young Jamal Lewis, a 17-year-old from down the block, wandered in, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the gleaming motorcycle. Jamal had been hanging around Elijah's place for years, drawn by the stories of resilience and the promise of learning a trade that could keep him off the streets. "Morning, Mr. Brooks," Jamal said, shifting his weight awkwardly, his sneakers scuffing the concrete floor. Elijah looked up, his graying beard framing a warm smile, and handed the boy a rag. "Grab that and help me buff the fenders. You remember what I taught you last time? Gentle circles, no streaks." As they worked side by side, Elijah shared lessons. "Beyond mechanics, life's like this engine. Son, you gotta maintain it, respect it, or it'll break down when you need it most. And out there, folks might try to knock you off balance, but you stay steady. Hear me." Jamal nodded eagerly, absorbing every word, his own dreams of owning a bike fueled by Elijah's tales of open-road freedom. The boy opened up about his absent father and the pressures at school, where gang influences loomed large, and Elijah listened, without judgment, offering guidance drawn from his own youthful struggles in a segregated South. By the time Jamal headed home for breakfast, Elijah felt that familiar swell of purpose mentoring. These kids was his way of fighting back against a world that too often discarded them. He headed inside to gear up, slipping into his well-worn leather jacket that still carried faint traces of his late wife's perfume, a reminder of the 35 years they'd shared before breast cancer claimed her. In the mirror, he adjusted his helmet strap, noting the lines etched deep around his eyes, not from laughter, but from vigilance, from proving his worth time and again in a society quick to assume the worst. Back in the garage, he performed his ritual pre-ride check. Tires inflated, brakes responsive, lights functioning, lessons from the military that had saved his life more than once, and a precaution born of knowing that for a black man on the road, even a minor infraction could turn deadly. The Harley thundered to life, its exhaust note echoing through the neighborhood like a call to adventure. And neighbors waved as he eased out. Mrs. Ramirez from next door calling, "Ride safe, Elijah." He nodded, accelerating smoothly onto the feeder road, the wind picking up as he merged onto the highway, the vast Texas sky unfolding above him like a canvas of possibility. For those first miles, everything was perfect, the engine's vibration syncing with his heartbeat, the sun warming his shoulders, the landscape blurring into a meditative blur. Here, he wasn't defined by his race or his age. He was just a rider, unburdened, escaping the subtle discriminations that dotted his daily life, like the store clerks who followed him, or the job interviews that ended abruptly. But peace was shattered. When blue lights flashed in his rearview mirrors to patrol cars weaving aggressively through traffic, horns blaring as drivers swerved to avoid them, Elijah's stomach tightened. Experience had taught him these stops rarely ended well, but he signaled properly and pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under his tires as he killed the engine and raised his hands visibly, palms out in a gesture of compliance he'd perfected over years of unjust encounters. The cruisers boxed him in, doors slamming as officers Harlan and Vance approached, their faces set in arrogant scowls, badges glinting like threats. Harlan, the older of the two with a paunch straining his uniform, barked first. "Out here playing easy rider, huh? License and registration, now." Elijah kept his tone even, respectful despite the rising tension. "Officers, good morning. May I ask what I did wrong?" Vance, younger and twitchier, circled the bike like a predator. "Unsafe riding, swerving all over the lane. You drunk or something?" Elijah knew it was a lie he'd been steady as a rail, but arguing wouldn't help. Slowly, he reached for his wallet, announcing each movement. "I'm getting my ID from my jacket pocket." But before he could, Harlan lunged, grabbing Elijah's collar and yanking him off the bike, the Harley toppling with a sickening crash of metal on stone. Pain shot through Elijah's hip as he hit the ground, but worse was the sight of his prized possession scarred and dented. "Get up, boy," Harlan snarled, the slur dripping with venom. "Think you own these roads?" Vance joined in, kicking at Elijah's leg. "We run this highway our rules." Elijah's military instincts surged. He wasn't going down without a fight. As Harlan hauled him up, Elijah drove an elbow into the officer's midsection, hearing the wind rush out of him. Vance charged, but Elijah pivoted, his fist connecting with the younger man's chin in a precise jab honed from boot camp drills. The officers reeled, shock widening their eyes. They weren't used to resistance, especially from someone they deemed powerless. But rage fueled their recovery. Harlan roared and tackled Elijah, fists flying in a barrage of blows to his ribs and face. Vance's boot found Elijah's side, cracking bone with an audible snap. Blood filled Elijah's mouth, vision blurring. But he blocked what he could, thinking of his mentees like Jamal, of how he'd taught them to stand firm. The assault might have ended him, if not for the sudden hiss of air breaks a massive 18-wheeler pulling over ahead. Its driver, a burly trucker named Carl Jenkins, leaning out with his phone raised. Dash cam rolling. "I'm filming this." Carl shouted. Behind them, 3 motorcycles roared onto the shoulder riders from the Lone Star Brotherhood, a diverse club Elijah occasionally joined for charity runs. They pulled out their phones too, one yelling, "We see everything, back off." Harlan paused mid-punch, Vance stepping away as awareness dawned. Witnesses, evidence. Elijah lay battered, dust coating his jacket, but alive, his eyes defiant. The crowd grew as more vehicles stopped, phones out, turning the shoulder into a makeshift courtroom. Sirens wailed, a Norah state trooper cruiser arriving, Officer Lisa Ramirez emerging with hand on holster, scanning the scene. From one of the motorcycles stepped Judge Henry Wallace, an old Army buddy of Elijah's, his judicial robes traded for riding leathers that couldn't hide his commanding presence. "What the hell is this?" Ramirez demanded, eyeing the fallen Elijah and the looming officers. Harlan straightened, feigning authority, apprehending a resistant suspect. "Ma'am." Wallace interjected, his baritone cutting through. "I witnessed the unprovoked attack assault under color of law, clear as day." Vance paled. "Sir, you don't, I do," Wallace retorted. 30 years on the bench, I've seen every cover-up. Not today." Carl called down, Dashcam, got it all every punch. Ramirez positioned herself protectively, weapons down both of. U State Patrol overrides local on highways. As Harlan protested, the gathering crowd murmured, some live streaming, the air electric with shifting power. Ramirez cuffed them efficiently, the clicks resounding like verdicts, cheers erupting. From onlookers, Wallace knelt by Elijah. Hold on, brother medics en route. Elijah managed a weak grin through bloodied lips. Just scratches, ... but my bike, ... A Brotherhood rider promised. We'll fix her up. An ambulance arrived, paramedics tending Elijah's wounds, cracked ribs, lacerations, bruises blooming like storm clouds. As they loaded him, he glimpsed Harlan and Vance in separate cruisers, faces twisted in humiliation. At the hospital, his daughter, Nurse Maya Brooks, rushed to his bedside, her scrubs disheveled, tears mixing with fury. Dad, who did this? He squeezed her hand. Bad badges, but we got M this time. The TV blared. Breaking news. 2 officers arrested after assaulting motorcyclist. Witnesses include Judge. Elijah watched, pain meds dulling the ache, realizing this wasn't isolated. Whispers from his club hinted at patterns of abuse on that highway stretch. As evening fell, reporters clamored outside, but Elijah rested, knowing the real fight was just beginning, a battle against entrenched corruption that had preyed on his community for too long. One he'd wage with the same resolve that carried him through war and prejudice. The next days blurred in recovery, but calls poured in. From Jamal offering to watch the garage. From Wallace updating on charges. From Maria Lopez, an investigative journalist tipped off by the viral videos. Elijah's bruises faded, but his determination sharpened. He'd exposed to predators, but sensed a larger beast lurking in the shadows of power. Lying there, he replayed the confrontation, vowing to mentor not just mechanics, but resistance, to teach the young that dignity wasn't given, but defended. The highway incident had ignited something irreversible. A spark that would illuminate dark corners of injustice, drawing allies and enemies alike into a storm of reckoning. And as the sun set over Houston's skyline, Elijah Brooks closed his eyes, ready for whatever came next, his spirit unbroken, his ride far from over. In the quiet aftermath of his hospital release, Elijah Brooks returned to his Houston home under a sky heavy with the promise of rain, his ribs bandaged and his steps measured. But his resolve forged sharper than ever by the highway ordeal that had thrust him into the spotlight as a symbol of resistance against badge-worn tyranny. Chapter 2 began, not with rest, but with a knock at his door from Maria Lopez, the tenacious, independent journalist whose sharp eyes and sharper pen had already dissected the viral videos of his assault. Her presence, a whirlwind of notebooks and determination as she declared, "Mr. Brooks, this isn't just about 2 bad apples, I've got leads suggesting a whole rotten orchard stretching to the top." Elijah invited her in, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with a faint antiseptic linger on his skin. And as they sat at his kitchen table, cluttered with get-well cards from neighbors and mentees, Maria laid out her preliminary findings. Anonymous, tips from precinct insiders hinting at a pattern of targeted stops on Highway 35, where officers Harlan and Vance had racked up dozens of arrests over 3 years, mostly against minority drivers, resulting in suspiciously high rates of asset forfeitures that funneled vehicles and cash into obscure auctions benefiting city elites. Elijah's jaw tightened as he listened, his mind flashing to whispered stories from his Lone Star Brotherhood rides. Tales of brothers pulled over for nothing, their bikes impounded on flimsy pretexts, families left destitute while the officers strutted away unscathed. "I've seen it," he admitted, pouring her a mug, but never connected the dots like this, like a machine, grinding folks down. Maria nodded, her fingers flying over her tablet to pull up public records she'd scraped late into the night. showing how seized assets from those stop scars, motorcycles, even jewelry were sold through companies linked to relatives of police. Chief Donovan Reed, the man whose smug face had appeared on TV defending his officers as heroes under fire. The conversation stretched into the afternoon. Elijah sharing names of affected riders he'd mentored, like Marcus Hale, a delivery driver who'd lost his van to a drug find that later proved planted, forcing him into debt and despair. Maria's eyes lit with investigative fire. "We need more hard evidence, not just patterns. Judge Wallace mentioned you'd trust him. He's willing to pull strings for court records." Elijah agreed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle like a familiar rucksack from his Army days. Knowing this probe could endanger them all, but unable to turn away from the faces of those kids in his garage. Like Jamal, who deserved roads, free of predators in uniform. That evening, as thunder rumbled outside, Judge Henry Wallace arrived in his unassuming sedan. His judicial gravitas undiminished by the casual attire, carrying a briefcase stuffed with subpoenaed files he'd discreetly obtained through old courthouse allies wary of Reed's influence. The three huddled in Elijah's living room, rain pattering against the windows like impatient fingers, as Wallace spread documents across the coffee table: arrest logs, forfeiture orders, and bank traces revealing a labyrinth of corruption, where Harlan and Vance weren't rogue actors, but cogs in a system orchestrated by Chief Reed and Mayor Victor Kane, who appointed judges friendly to quick approvals of seizures, ensuring a steady flow of untraceable funds to campaign coffers and personal luxuries like Kane's recent lakeside retreat, purchased far beyond a public servant's salary. Elijah traced a finger over a map Wallace had marked. Red dots clustering along Highway 35, each representing a life upended. A single mother whose sedan was taken after a suspicious odor search yielded nothing but humiliation. A Latino trucker, whose rig vanished into auction oblivion, leaving him jobless. "This ain't justice," Elijah muttered, his voice gravelly with suppressed anger. "It's theft with a warrant." Maria cross-referenced the files with her own database, uncovering emails leaked by a disillusioned clerk showing redirecting patrols. 2 high-yield zones, code for minority heavy routes promising bonuses for big hauls. The trio debated strategy late into the night. Wallace cautioning about retaliation. Kane's got the city council in his pocket. One wrong move, and they'll bury us in lawsuits. But Elijah, drawing from his Vietnam survival mindset, proposed action. "We hit their weak spot: storage. If they're stashing planted evidence, it's gotta be off books." Maria's research pinpointed a self-storage facility on the city's outskirts, rented under a shell company tied to Reed's brother-in-law, and with Wallace's judicial leverage securing a temporary access warrant under the guise of a routine audit. They planned a covert visit, hearts pounding with the thrill of the hunt. The next morning dawned crisp after the storm. Elijah easing his repaired Harley from the garage, testing the brakes meticulously after a nagging intuition, only to discover clean slices in the line's sabotage, professional and precise, sending a chill down his spine as he realized the corrupt network had eyes on him. He called a trusted mechanic from the Brotherhood to tow it, then met Maria and Wallace at a neutral coffee shop, sharing photos of the tampering. Their scared means, "We're close." Undeterred, they proceeded that night under the cover of darkness, Wallace's connections disabling the facility's alarms for a brief window. The trio slipping through chain-link fences like shadows, hearts racing as they approached Unit 142. Maria's lockpick set honed from years covering underworld stories, clicking open the padlock with a soft snick. Inside, flashlights revealed organized chaos. Shelves of labeled boxes with dates and victim names. Bags of narcotics in a cooler ready for planting. Hard drives buzzing with unaltered dashcam footage that contradicted official reports. Elijah's breath caught as he opened a file on his own incident. Seeing unaltered video of his peaceful ride twisted into aggression in falsified logs, Maria copied data furiously onto encrypted drives, whispering, "This ties Reed directly mails approving quotas." Wallace photographed ledgers showing kickbacks, his face grim, millions siphoned, communities bled dry. But time ticked down. A distant car engine spurred them to exit, restoring the unit flawlessly, escaping just as a security patrol rounded the corner. Back at Elijah's, adrenaline fading into exhaustion, they pored over the hall videos of Harlan laughing as he hid drugs in glove compartments, Vance forging signatures on forfeiture forms, and spreadsheets linking sales to Kane's offshore accounts disguised as consulting fees. Elijah felt a surge of vindication mixed with sorrow for the victims listed, vowing to contact them personally, starting with Marcus Hale, whom he visited the next day at a rundown apartment, sharing the evidence and watching hope flicker in the man's eyes for the first time in months. Maria, meanwhile, faced her own threats, an anonymous email warning her to drop the story, followed by slashed tires on her car, but she pressed on, cross-verifying with sources in the DA's office, who confirmed judges were pressured to rubber-stamp cases. Wallace used his network to shield them, filing protective orders and alerting federal contacts about interstate implications. As some seizures involved out-of-state drivers, Elijah, not content with data alone, rallied his brotherhood for reconnaissance. Riders tailing Harlan and Vance discreetly, capturing photos of them meeting Reed at a seedy bar, exchanging envelopes thick with cash. The investigation deepened when Maria uncovered a whistleblower, former dispatcher named Carla Ruiz, who met them in a park under overcast skies, her voice trembling as she described overhearing Reed boast about cleaning up the streets, while lining pockets, providing audio recordings from her phone that matched the storage findings. Elijah listened intently, his mentorship instincts kicking in to reassure her, "You're brave." Carla braver than they know. As threats escalated a brick through Elijah's window with a note reading "back off or burn," he fortified his home, installing cameras and enlisting Jamal and other kids to help without endangering them, turning it into a lesson on vigilance. Eyes open, always. The group pieced together a timeline. Kane's election funded by forfeiture proceeds, Reed's promotions tied to haul volumes, Harlan and Vance as enforcers rewarded with overtime payoffs. Maria drafted her expose outline. Wallace prepared affidavits for FBI submission, and Elijah, drawing strength from daily garage sessions where kids now discussed not just engines but rights, felt the net tightening. A pivotal breakthrough came during a stakeout Elijah led, hidden in shadows near Reed's home, witnessing a late-night drop-off of documents from Kane's aide, which Maria's drone camera captured proof of ongoing coordination. Tensions peaked when Vance confronted Elijah at a gas station, shoving him against his truck with hissed threats. "You think you're a hero? We'll end you." Elijah stood firm, replying coolly, "Heroes don't hide behind badges," diffusing the standoff as bystanders filmed, adding more viral fuel. Back home, as Maria encrypted the full dossier, Wallace revealed his own risk. Anonymous calls to his chambers questioning his impartiality. Yet unity held them. Elijah hosted a strategy dinner, Maya's home-cooked meal grounding them amid chaos, her nursing skills tending a minor cut from the confrontation. The chapter built toward escalation, Elijah receiving a package of falsified photos implying his involvement in crimes, a smear attempt Maria debunked through forensic apps, solidifying their resolve to expose the syndicate before it crushed them. As nights lengthened, Elijah rode short loops under starry skies, contemplating the web's vastness, how it ensnared not just individuals, but generations, perpetuating cycles of distrust and poverty. Maria's article drafts grew, incorporating victim testimonies Elijah gathered door to door, humanizing the data with stories like a grandmother losing her savings to a suspicious funds seizure. Wallace navigated legal minefields, blocking a frivolous lawsuit from Reed's lawyers. The trio's bond strengthened, Elijah viewing them as a new platoon, each battle scar a step toward dismantling the machine. Finally, as Chapter 2 crested, they uncovered the syndicate's nerve center, a digital vault on the hard drives holding Kane's master ledger. Decryptable only with a key Maria sourced from Carla, revealing ties to state-level politicians, broadening the scandal's scope and setting. The stage for a public reckoning that would demand not just arrests, but systemic overhaul. Elijah's unyielding spirit. The catalyst in a fight far from finished in the electric tension of Houston's Grand Civic Auditorium, where polished marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers and banners proclaiming community, unity, and reform, fluttered under air-conditioned breezes. Elijah Brooks stepped into what would become the climactic arena of his fight, against the entrenched corruption that had scarred his city for too long, his leather jacket concealing the flash drive of damning evidence like a hidden dagger ready to strike at the heart of power. Chapter 3 unfolded not in whispers, but in a blaze of confrontation, as Mayor Victor Kane took the stage amid polite applause from a packed house of skeptical citizens, city officials, and media crews, his tailored suit and rehearsed smile masking the desperation of a man sensing the noose tightening from the shadows of the investigation that Elijah, Maria Lopez, and Judge Henry Wallace had relentlessly pursued. Kane's voice boomed through the microphones, extolling visions of transparent policing and healing divides, while behind him sat Chief Donovan Reed, flanked by officers Harlan and Vance, their uniforms starched to perfection as if to defy the digital ghosts haunting their every move. Elijah, positioned in the back rows with Wallace nearby for legal cover, felt the weight of the months of clandestine digs, near misses with sabotage, and alliances forged in secrecy now converging on this public spectacle designed as a PR salve but destined to erupt into chaos. Maria, embedded in the press pit with her laptop primed and backups streaming to secure servers, exchanged a subtle nod with Elijah across the room, her scars from the earlier arson attempt a silent testament to their shared peril. As Kane opened the floor to questions, feigning openness with a wave of his hand, Elijah rose slowly, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a revving engine. "Mayor, how do you explain the millions in laundered forfeiture funds padding your pockets while families lose everything to planted evidence?" The auditorium froze, then exploded in gasps and flashes from cameras, Kane's face paling as he stammered for control. "This is not the forum for baseless accusations. Security, escort this man out." But Elijah pressed forward down the aisle, undeterred, pulling the drive from his pocket and tossing it to Maria, plugged it in with lightning speed, her fingers dancing over keys to bypass the auditorium's AV locks she'd hacked earlier with Wallace's insider codes. Harlan and Vance leaped from their seats, recognizing the threat, charging through the crowd with shouts of "Stop him!" as Reed barked orders into his radio, summoning reinforcements from the lobby. The screen behind Kane flickered to life against his frantic gestures to cut the feed, projecting the first wave of evidence, unaltered footage of Harlan slipping baggies into a minivan's console during a stop, his laughter echoing tinny through speakers, followed by bank statements showing transfers to Kane's shell entities, each transaction time-stamped to match seizure dates. The crowd surged, some standing in outrage, others pulling out phones to live-stream the unraveling chants of corrupt, rippling through the seats as Elijah reached the stage steps, dodging a plainclothes guard's grab with a sidestep honed from years of evading ambushes in dense jungles. Vance reached him first, swinging a wild punch that Elijah parried with a forearm block, countering with a knee to the midriff that doubled the officer over. Gasping for air, not a repeat of their highway clash, but a calculated defense amid flashing lights and screaming spectators. Harlan barreled in next, tackling Elijah onto the carpeted aisle, their bodies tumbling in a tangle of limbs as fists flew. Elijah's elbow cracking against Harlan's nose with a wet crunch, blood splattering. The nearby seats where terrified attendees scrambled away. "You should have stayed in your garage, old-timer." Harlan snarled through gritted teeth, pinning Elijah momentarily before the veteran twisted free, using the momentum to flip Harlan onto his back and deliver a stomping boot to the shoulder that dislocated it with a pop audible over the din. Reed, seeing the tide turn, drew his service weapon discreetly, aiming through the melee. But Wallace's booming command halted him. "Stand down, Chief. This is all recorded, and federal eyes are watching." Indeed, undercover FBI agents, tipped off by Wallace's earlier submissions of the storage unit hall, emerged from the crowd in tactical vests, shouting "FBI's freeze." As they formed a perimeter, their presence a surprise even to Elijah, who had suspected but not confirmed their involvement until now. Kane, cornered on stage, tried to flee through a side curtain, but Maria's voice rang out over the speaker she'd commandeered. "Not so fast, here's your ledger." "Mayor," asked the screen. Scrolled through incriminating emails detailing his directives to ramp up yield operations in low-income districts. Each message a nail in his political coffin. The auditorium devolved into pandemonium. Protesters from Elijah's community, organized quietly by his daughter Maya through church networks linking arms to block exits, preventing the corrupt from slipping away, their signs reading "No more stolen lives," waving like battle flags. Elijah, bruised but unbroken, rose from subduing Harlan just as Vance recovered and lunged with a concealed knife from his boot, the blade glinting understage. Lights a desperate escalation not seen in prior encounters. Elijah sidestepped, grabbing Vance's wrist in a vice grip and twisting until the knife clattered free. Then sweeping the leg to drop him face first, kneeling on his back to restrain him without lethal force, whispering fiercely, "This ends now for Marcus, for Carla, for every soul you crushed." FBI lead agent Torres approached, cuffing Vance efficiently while praising Elijah's restraint. "Civilian, stand down, you've done enough." As agents swarmed, hauling Reed away in zip ties as he protested his innocence to unheeding ears, and Kane slumped against the podium. Mumbling about lawyers, the screen continued its relentless reveal. Victim testimonies compiled by Maria, including a tearful video from a young father whose business collapsed after a rigged stop, his words humanizing the cold data. The crowd's energy shifted from chaos to catharsis. Applause breaking out as Harlan was dragged off stage, his uniform torn and dignity shattered, a far cry from his highway arrogance. Kache, catching his breath amid the agent's perimeter, locked eyes with Maya in the audience, her proud nod a balm to his aching body, reminding him this victory was collective, born from garage lessons, late-night strategies, and unyielding community bonds. Outside, news vans clustered like vultures, helicopters worry overhead as the story went national. Headlines flashing on phones: "Houston corruption bust Livmeyer, chief arrested in dramatic town hall meltdown." In the ensuing hours, as Elijah gave his statement to Torres in a cordoned-off green room, detailing the trail from highway assault to storage raid, the agent revealed the broader implications. Their evidence had triggered a multi-state probe into similar forfeiture schemes, with Kane's connections leading to indicted senators. Wallace, ever the legal anchor, filed immediate motions for victim restitutions, ensuring seized assets would be returned through a special fund, while Maria's live feed broke viewership records, her commentary weaving Elijah's personal saga into a national call for reform. The night stretched into dawn with Elijah at the hospital for precautionary checks, Maya by his side, fussing over scans that showed no breaks, just deep contusions, her relief palpable as she joked, "Dad, "You're tougher than that old Harley." Discharged by morning, he returned home to a hero's welcome, neighbors lining the street with cheers. Jamal and the Garage Kids presenting a banner, "Mr. Brooks, our road warrior." In the weeks that followed, as indictments rained down on 28 officials, including complicit judges and union heads, Elijah resumed his routines with renewed vigor. The garage buzzing with more youth than ever, now incorporating sessions on civic rights alongside carburetor tweaks. Jamal leading discussions on spotting planted evidence from his own research inspired by the scandal. Maria's book deal came through, her manuscript dedicating chapters to Elijah's pivotal role, and she visited often, collaborating on op-eds. That influenced a state bill mandating body cams and independent audits for forfeitures. Wallace, elevated to a reform oversight committee, ensured the changes stuck. His courtroom presence now a force for equity rather than status quo. Elijah's rides took on new meaning. The highway no longer a gauntlet, but a symbol of reclaimed freedom. Fellow bikers saluting him at stops with tales of their own empowered encounters, filing complaints without fear. Demanding accountability. One crisp evening, as autumn leaves swirled on the breeze, Elijah hosted a community barbecue in his driveway. Flames flickering under grills laden with ribs and corn. Laughter echoing as victims like Marcus shared recovery stories, his van restored. Through the fund, his business rebounding. Maya announced her promotion to head nurse, crediting the family's resilience, while Maria captured the scene for a follow-up piece on healing. Judge Wallace arrived with federal commendations for Elijah, framing his actions as the spark that ignited systemic change, but Elijah deflected praise. "Wasn't me alone, we all rode this road together." As the gathering wound down, Elijah slipped away for a solo ride under a canopy of stars. The Harleys rumble a symphony of triumph, wind carrying echoes of the chants from that fateful haul. Victory tasted like the open horizon vast, earned and shared, reminding him that true power lay not in badges or titles, but in the unyielding pursuit of justice, a lesson he'd impart to every kid who wandered into his garage, ensuring the cycle of corruption ended with them, birthing instead a legacy of empowerment that stretched far beyond Houston's borders, into a future where roads were truly free for all.